Okay, 7th grade, so now that I have laid out where I want the rest of my plant forms in crayon, hopefully you guys can kind of see this. I'll pick this up. It'll be easier to see once we throw some chalk in here. But that is the next step, is chalk. Now, if you were able to grab chalk, fantastic. If not, we can use pencil and we can continue to use crayon. And I show you how to use those things on the second version, but for this version I'm going to show you chalk because, again, like I said, some of you were able to pick that up, so I want to show you how to work with that. So if you have chalk, no matter if it's a few or a lot, if you grabbed what I gave you, you have a baggie of chalk. If you have sidewalk chalk at home, that might work also. Give it a shot. It's not quite as soft as the stuff that I'm going to be showing you, but it could still work in a pinch, so give it a try. You have it, might as well try and use it. Best word of advice I can give to all of you that are using chalk is have a scrap piece of paper. It doesn't matter if it's notebook paper or the back of a folder or something, but you want to clean your chalk off first, because sometimes the color that you think it is isn't always the color that it starts off to be. And if you don't clean it off and you start with a dirty piece of chalk, you're going to have a color in a spot that you don't want that color because it was covered in something else. So, word of caution, before you use chalk, even if it's something like white or something very light colored, always clean it off. Even if it's dark and you're like, it'll be fine, still clean it off, because you might want blue and it might start off looking black or really dark purple or brown. So it doesn't take you long to wipe it off before you get started. So my next step is using chalk to fill in where my glue has dried. I'm also going to be carefully adding color where my crayon marks are too. My crayon doesn't have as easy a resist quality as my glue because the glue has a texture. It's actually kind of bumped up right now. So even when the chalk hits it, I can wipe it off. It's smooth and I'll see the blue of my construction paper poking through. For the crayon, even though it's waxy compared to the chalkiness of my chalk, I still need to be careful to kind of stay inside the lines, for now anyway, so that I can still see all my nice crayon marks that I have. I may also play with a little bit of smudging in the background. Depends on how I feel, depends on the look of the whole composition of this piece by the time I get everything filled in. So this is pretty much the last step, is adding color with chalk. So that's what we're gonna do now. When you guys start with chalk, don't think that everything is only just one color. You're using chalk, it blends beautifully, so play with mixing colors to get a different result. When you guys are using your fingers to smush your colors together, it helps to either have a piece of paper towel or go to your nearest sink and once in a while rinse your fingers off. Because if your fingers get too dirty and you want to keep a bright color bright and a dark color dark, it's not going to happen because your fingers are your tools for smudging, and if those are the wrong color, that's going to transfer to whatever it is you want to blend. So another word of caution to you guys as you're using chalk is make sure as you're moving things around, fingers are clean. And I like throwing lots of cool colors in with my stuff. I don't like just sticking with one color. I never have. I like throwing blues where there's shadows, and I like throwing oranges where there's brights. So play around, get creative. Nobody's gonna judge. Okay, 7th graders, so when you get to this point, I went back and I just darkened everything in hopes that maybe you can see it a little bit easier. But your next step and last step for this is we are going to add shading. So again, this is an observational drawing, meaning you are either looking at the real leaf from a fern or the real twig from a tree, and you're looking at where the shadows are. Is there a light side? Is there a dark side? What's the difference in texture between the branch versus the little leaf or the little bud that might be appearing because it is springtime? If it's a fern leaf, what's the difference between a light and a dark side? Is there a different texture between the middle rib of the leaf versus the little prongs that stick out from it? For rhubarb or for pine needles, show me the different textures on those. That all has to deal with the types of marks you might use, and the lights and the darks, or the shading. The other thing that you're going to be paying attention to that you've kind of been doing since the get-go is positive, negative space. So positive space is the stuff that we drew. So this tree branch takes up room. This fern leaf takes up room. These little purple flowers and what's going to become pine needles, that all takes up room. But the space that's in between it, in this case it's on this notebook paper, that's all dead space. That's called negative space. There's nothing there. We might leave that alone by the time we're all done. We might put a little bit of a shading. We might even smudge pencil lead with our finger just to kind of soften the pencil or the notebook paper lines that are back here. Again, each one of these is going to look different because each one of you are different. So again, this is version 2. If you don't have chalk, if you don't have glue, but I know for a fact you at least have some sort of pencil at home that you can draw with. So that's what I'm going to start doing now, is just showing you the textures and types of marks and shading. Here we go. Little tip for you guys as I am drawing here. When I'm shading things in, if it's going to be fairly dark, I do a lot of hatching and cross-hatching. So, hatching might look something like this. Cross-hatching goes over top. Also, if I'm just trying to fill in a color, I'm doing this really dark, so I'm exaggerating, but instead of going back and forth like this and getting little marks showing where you start and stop all over, which sometimes can be distracting, I do little ovals. And then I just take and I make those ovals overlap each other everywhere. And then there is no harsh start or stop place because those ovals don't really have a start or a stop. It's continuous. So those are just a few of the marks you're going to see me do all over this thing as we get going. I'm also making this make sense, meaning if this is a tree branch, it's going to be all gnarly and craggly. So some of my marks are going to be more jagged. They're not going to be so soft and refined. It won't be as soft as, let's say, the petal to a flower or anything like that. So I'm going to show that rough texture by having rough marks. Texture is huge. Texture and value. So your lights and your darks. So as you guys are filling this in with value and shading, remember, you do not have to fill this in going with your pencil stroke all in the same direction. Go all over the place. I am kind of staying within the boundaries of, in this case, my little tree branch here. But I'm going to zoom in on this when we're all done, and you're going to see all the textures happening if you can't see it now. And that's what helps make this pop off the page and give it almost a three-dimensional quality. So I do not want you to sit here and just be like a machine and color everything in up and down for the entire piece or side to side, because all of this plant life is so different in so many ways that you're going to show all that different kind of texture just based off the marks that you use and put down to show what materials these are made out of, whether it's wood or a leaf or a petal or a needle or anything like that. And keep a sharpener handy if you've got one. If not, a piece of sandpaper, anything you can use to keep your pencils sharp, because I go through a lot of pencil lead on these demos and I have a feeling you will too. Alrighty, 7th grade, so there you have it. That is going to be your next project, is your observational drawing of nature, or observational nature drawing, however you want to call it. And version 1, that's using anything you could have picked up at school. And version 2, that's using whatever you might have at your disposal. One little bit of advice to finish these off, especially the chalk one, but even your graphite one, because both love to smear. And as you can see, my hands, they're still kind of dirty, and that's after washing them. So chalk does get messy. But what you can do is you can take something like hairspray. Doesn't have to be Suave, but that's what I had. And you can spray your pieces to prevent the chalk from smudging, and same with your graphite. So I like doing it outside because it's a little windy. Oh no!